Did they just discover Noah's Ark? This is Tony. Hope you're all doing well. We actually have a lot of people talking about this recent. We have Wes Huff chiming in. We got all these other people as well. We have this research going on at the site. And we're going to get into this in this video. We're talking about at the Durapinar Formation, where it's in eastern Turkey. And apparently this is the one that Ron Wyatt said back in, I think it was the 80s or 70s, where he went there and, yeah, it was in the 70s. Archaeologist Ron Wyatt popularized the Durapinar Formation in eastern Turkey, the possible resting place for the Noah's Ark. And we'll get into that. We got actually a ton of stuff to get into with regards to this, and it's kind of interesting. Once you understand all the details surrounding it, it makes it very obvious that this could very well be the site. There's only two different places in the world that claim to have potentially Noah's Ark, where they have some sort of evidence of something being there, some scientific evidence that it may actually be it. There's one on Mt Ararat. All right, my friends, we have two separate locations where they're claiming Noah's Ark is at. Most people have heard of the Ron Wyatt location, which is the one everyone's been discussing of recent, which I'm going to get into that one as well. However, I am divided on which one is the actual correct site. The one that Ron Wyatt found is on the mountains of Ararat. And you don't see any wood. You just see pretty much the ground, dirt. There is evidence of organic life. There's evidence of caverns. People have been talking about it over the last couple days. This one's a little different. This one is on the very high up peak of Mt Ararat, and apparently is still in the shape of a boat, frozen. I'm going to show you a picture of it right here. Here is actually part of it. Now, I remember seeing this back like 15 years ago on YouTube, and I couldn't find any video with it anymore. So I thought I would kind of go back into this one because everyone's been talking about the other one. And we're going to get into the other one as well because I actually am kind of split on which one is the real one. However, I mean, the fact that this one looks like a boat frozen on literally Mt Ararat, I'm kind of leaning towards it now because it's pretty crazy. And there's a lot of weirdness surrounding this investigation, this archaeological investigation with regards to the one on Mt Ararat, because it's difficult to get to. And apparently there's some weird, I don't know what you would want to call it. I guess the people that were involved are all fighting. It's really bizarre. But this is from 4 months ago, this video right here. And a lot of people are not aware of this because it's gotten no traction compared to the one about that everyone's talking about right now, Ron Wyatt's version.
Is Noah's Ark. First of all, the interior is filled with cages for animals and also perches for the birds. Anywhere from 20 centimeters in width to over 4 meters in width. There are thousands of cages for animals and also perches for the birds. And we know that
this is crazy.
This from the non-skeletal remains, the feces, the hair, the fur, from every type of animal, mammals, birds.
I feel like this one didn't get off the ground. Actually, I know this video did, or one of the videos on this did get off the ground because I remember seeing it like 12, 15 years ago, and it had a lot of views. This one here has very few views, but it could have something to do with how he started the video. It has this really weird fight going on between some of the people involved. Perhaps this is sort of something to cause derision so people can't know about this potential place where the Ark could be. This could very well be it. Kind of actually weird, really weird and interesting at the same time. All these things, he put out all these videos, lie. What is he talking about? Refutes the fifth lie of the Ark enemies that Noah's Ark artifacts are from the medieval okay, so they're claiming it's from a medieval castle. So that this frozen thing we're looking at, they're claiming it's from a medieval castle, but he's saying that it actually has lots of animal remains and bird feathers and stuff like that in it.
Amphibians, reptiles, and insects. There's thousands of animal tracks of every type of animal. Also in the interior of the barge, there's a small habitations for very few humans. And
this is interesting because, like, I could see either site being potentially Noah's Ark. Obviously, if this one was encrusted in ice, it would make sense that you would still see the wood potentially. The other one is obviously in a place that's far lower down in the mountains of Ararat and was able to, kind of degrade considerably over time.
One of the notable characteristics is all the furniture is adhered to the walls. There's no free-floating furniture. It's all...
What is this? I think he just made... That's not an actual picture of it.
Capture the walls.
This one, though, back here is an actual picture of it. That's kind of crazy looking. You could say there's animals in this castle or whatever they're claiming it was. Very strange. This guy's got a lot of videos too, it looks like. Actually, let's go pull up his channel. Noah's Ark data. Let's go look at it really quick. Okay, most popular. Let's see what he's got here. Oh yeah, is that the one I saw a long time ago? I don't know. No, this is 1 year ago. So look, this is a completely new channel. This isn't the... I remember this picture though. Or one like it. I think that's the same picture as this one back here, isn't it? Yeah. All right. Let's pull this up. This is from a year ago. Okay.
Noah's Ark has been rediscovered in the southern gorge of Greater Mount Ararat called Agredagi.
Okay, let's see what's going on here. Oh wow, he's got a lot of interesting stuff in here. Let's pull it up here and see what he's saying. Angle of exterior hull sloping down inward towards central keel of Noah's Ark, east port side. What are we looking at here?
Site is certainly a maritime barge. Not only do you have the hull and many of the walls that angle inward toward the central keel, but you also have the seafaring woods of Cupressa sempervirens, Mediterranean cypress, oak, and teak.
Okay, so they really went in deep on this one. I wonder if this could be it, because it seems like they have a lot of potential evidence here. He's talking about certain types of trees that are used commonly for boats being discovered in this, what appears to be a boat.
Also, in the interior of the structure that measures 158 meters in length, there are thousands of cages for animals. And we know...
We already covered that. Okay, that was from the other video. All right. What else has he got here? Here's another picture from inside. Higher portion of sloping deck. Lower portion. Okay, what is this all about? 1892.
He was also very instrumental in pushing for Armenian independence from Ottoman Turkey.
Oh, okay, yeah. So this is obviously, yeah, because it's near. So both of them are near Turkey and Armenia, and so it's talking about some of the history of the whole thing. What is this here? Okay, is this part of it?
Holes that led into Noah's Ark. Remember, the Armenians didn't allow anyone to go inside Noah's Ark. They could basically worship the Ark.
What?
From these little worship areas.
Oh, okay. So Armenia is Christian. They already had known about this alleged potential Noah's Ark structure found in the mountain, and it placed spots where you could pray. I mean, obviously they're not praying to the boat. I mean, especially if they're Christian. So it's kind of weird the way he said that there. Yeah, Orthodox is this guy. It looks like an Orthodox there. Wow. It's got like pottery and stuff in it, dude. Wood mortars. Oh, this is crazy. Wonder if this could be it, man. There's like lots of artifacts. Really discounted by the art?
Counted by the art guides were actually the more important artifacts archaeologically, and were given or were received by the younger members of the.
Oh my goodness. So so a lot of things were sold off or given away that were part of it sounds like. Huh. Some crazy stuff. Check out this channel. It's called Noah's Ark Data. I'm pretty sure I've seen this video like 15 years ago, at least partially. Obviously, it disappeared or something. Maybe this is someone who also knew about it, or maybe this is the originator. I don't know. It looks like it's the guy who originated the whole thing that's behind this Noah's Ark Data website, channel on YouTube. But yeah, I'll probably use this image maybe, or one of the other images as a thumbnail. He's got a lot of different. So apparently a lot of people are saying this is not. So this is interesting because this reminds me of how those that are against. Okay, how do we say this? You can call them those at the top, those behind closed doors, working in the shadows, whatever you want to call it. How they usually operate. For instance, if you think about for instance, the Shroud of Turin, they tried to discount that using false, sort of a corrupted sample that they radiocarbon dated back in the 80s. And they found out later, after doing 2 more tests, that, whoops, the first one we did was not correct. It was corrupted sample, and it made it look like it was from the medieval ages, or Middle Ages, medieval times. And in reality, they had a corrupted sample because they had put it back on the Shroud of Turin from the Middle Ages because it almost got burnt in the Middle Ages and they had to put something behind it. So then there's actually 2 more tests that were done later on, more recently, and showed that the Shroud of Turin was from the time of Christ. So they purposely try to put out information to discount a real piece of evidence that was discovered, like the Shroud of Turin, or perhaps in this case, if this is really Noah's Ark, it shouldn't be surprising that the powers that whatever be, don't want you to know about it, so they will try to discount it in many different ways. That might be actually proof this could be the real deal. Because it seems like the lamestream, whatever you want to call it, have no problem promoting the other one. So that makes me wonder even more. Which one is the real one? I'm kind of leaning towards this one now because of all the pushback they're getting for this. Kind of curious. I haven't looked into it a lot. Maybe you guys can go check it out. Check out his channel. I showed it right here, Noah's Ark Data. We're going to get into both, though, here in this video. I'm not saying this is the one. Maybe it's not. Maybe the other one's the one. But there's only 2 actual sites which show evidence of Noah's Ark. The other one has the right dimensions as well. Shows chambers. So one of these 2 is the real deal. Which one is it? And then there's one on the mountains of Ararat, which is the one we're talking about here, that they're now looking into and is going viral right now. Noah's Ark mystery deepens as researcher blows lid on strange rock formations in Turkey. A researcher's bombshell new findings about a strange rock formation in Turkey could prove that Noah's Ark was real. Andrew Jones, a researcher in Noah's Ark Scans, told GB News that exciting new findings about rock formation first discovered in 1959 in Turkey's Mt Ararat could prove the book of Genesis once existed. Now, of course, you have the one in Armenia and you have the one in Turkey. This is not Mount Ararat, but Turkey's Mount Ararat, or in the mountains of Ararat, I guess you would say. So it's not the exact Mount Ararat. Ground-penetrating radar scans and soil samples from the tunnel site, which reportedly match the 515-foot dimensions of Noah's Ark, uncovered a series of corridors below the earth, the outlet reported. Tunnels were discovered running down the middle of the boat along inside the edge of the possible ship, leading to central cavity Jones called atrium. God told Noah to bring animals in, and so these animals would have stayed there. Plus, Noah and his family, what's interesting is that these voids are lining up below the ground. They're not just random, so it actually seems to fit. They're talking about doing these scans. As you can see here, 2024, we took 88 random soil samples inside and outside the ship shape. Jones recalled that they showed us the soil inside the ship shape had 3 times more organic matter than outside, 38% more potassium. That shows it is that the soil is unique, and then the grass in the fall it has a yellower color just inside. So it shows that it's potentially decayed matter from like organic matter. Tunnels were discovered running down the middle of the boat. Okay, so, and actually we have some clips to talk about and show in this with regards to this as well. Let me play this clip right here. This kind of gives you an idea.
They have found what they believe is evidence of the Ark buried in a remote part of Turkey.
Andrew Jones from California says the dimensions match.
In chapter 6 of Genesis, it talks about a 300 cubit long boat. And that, if you use the Egyptian cubit, is 515 feet long, or about 157 meters. And that's exactly the length of this boat-shaped object.
These are the timbers of the ship. That's what we're looking at.
It's amazing.
So this is kind of amazing, right? So far.
Now is the lead archaeological researcher of Noah's Ark scans, joining us live from Turkey. Andrew, great to have you on. First things first, how long have you and your group been looking for Noah's Ark?
Well, personally, I've been interested in the stories as a child. I first heard about it from Ron Wyatt, who came out to California when I was in middle school.
Yeah, Ron Wyatt, of course. And I actually covered his videos in the past on my channel way back in the old days, maybe over a decade ago. Researcher believes Noah's Ark found in Turkey after new underground scans. Researchers working in Turkey say fresh scan data uncovered what appear to be tunnels inside the long debated landform, bolstering their case that the site may be man-made object that they believe is Noah's Ark. It is the right dimensions. It seems to have organization in it that relate to what Scripture says the Ark design would be. So this is interesting. This is definitely evidence that needs to be considered. Jones said his team's latest work had revealed tunnels in the landform suggestive of man-made structure. Our new research has shown that there are tunnels about 4 meters down and about 2 meters high, going down the center of the boat and on the inside edge of the whole shape. So it's kind of interesting. We have here, and I'm going to get into how this very well could be it, because the fact of the matter is there's only 2 places where they have any evidence of a potential Noah's Ark. And I'll show you that in a second. First, I'm going to mention food supply, 25-year shelf life. Link is in the description. You might want to get that considering all the things going on around us. They have 3 months worth for $7.97. Link is in the description. They have the food 3-month supply with the Mega Protein Kit. And also this book here, The Lost Ways, How Your Great-Great-Grandfather Lived Without Electricity. You never know what's next. It's always wise to have that. If there's some sort of weird thing that happened, power outages, world war, whatever it might be, robots taking over. Get the printed version, $37, How to Live for an Extended Period of Time Without Electricity. They also have other options available. I'm on X. We got stuff going over there. Pretty good now. My last post from yesterday got 22,000 views so far. Pretty cool. So it's going good over there. So go check that out as well. We're on Rumble. We're on, I got 2 websites linked below. One I made in 1998. I still update it with books and stuff, Christian books and apocryphal books, Book of Enoch and all this type of stuff as well. Just go check it out. Everything will link below. Let's get back to the video. So we have here scans and covered tunnels, possible beams. Of course, I'll play this in a second, but notice here the late Ron Wyatt, amateur archaeologist, popularized the Durapinar Formation in eastern Turkey as a possible resting place of Noah's Ark back in the late 1970s endured merciless people attacking. And you know what? There's a reason why you should listen when you see this. We saw the same thing with the Shroud of Turin. Back in the 80s, they supposedly dated the Shroud of Turin with radiocarbon dating. And the problem was they took some tainted sample because, of course, the shroud had been backed with something from the Middle Ages because of a fire that partially burned the shroud. And because of that, some of that contaminant got on the sample. They dated it to the Middle Ages because of the contamination. But then lately, they've done 2 other tests on it, and they found out, no, actually it dates back to the time of Christ. So for about 30 to 40 years, we were mercilessly mocked, like Ron Wyatt was, for believing the Shroud of Turin was real when we were correct the whole time. They had actually screwed up the science, maybe intentionally, maybe unintentionally, we don't know, but I'm guessing, I kind of feel this intentional factor to it. Considering all the other stuff going on around us and how they try to deceive us all the time, wouldn't be too surprised. The guy also got a high position at his university after the fact. Kind of weird. Was that a little bit of a promotion for what he put out about the Shroud of Turin not being from the time of Christ when it really was, when we found out later based on 2 other studies later on? Same also with Ron Wyatt and actually a lot of other people who bring out the truth, which some people don't want you to know about. Those at the top who don't obviously believe or worship the same God. Maybe they worship something a little darker. They don't want you to know these things because they don't want people to believe in God. Plain and simple. That's why they mocked him. Not because he was wrong. It was a coordinated effort. And actually, I'm going to show that over my other channel with regards to scientific discoveries like anti-gravity, which, of course, now we've had a scientist who just died who was working on it at NASA. She was working on it. She was going to publish a paper on it and mysteriously died. And we had someone who also was able to figure out cold fusion back in the 90s. And his funding got canceled, and then they mercilessly mocked him with a fraudulent experiment. And she shows, and so that's what happened to him back in the 90s. And we found out in the files, Jeffrey with the island, that guy apparently was the one who blocked funding for Stanley Pons, who actually discovered cold fusion and got it to work. Here we have the woman who worked at NASA, who was doing anti-gravity, who figured out how they were fraudulently hiding the real evidence. So they had someone recreate the experiment incorrectly, removing one factor that was important and saying it didn't work. So they purposely do this. Why would they do this? Oh, let me explain. It's very simple. Money. Do you want cars that run on water? If you're an oil company, no, because then if somebody can just take some water and put it in their gas tank, they don't need oil. They don't need gas, right? If you have cold fusion, that gives you free energy. Will the nuclear power plants, were the coal-fired power plants like that? Again, it comes back to big oil and big coal because coal and oil are connected. And my background is mechanical engineering as power plant technology. That was one of my studies, my thematic clusters in college for my Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering. The fact is, coal-fired power plants are the most predominant ones you see around us. They run on coal, which is the same as where oil is coming from. Same companies running that. So they don't want free energy. They don't want cars running on water. They're going to stop it. And of course, in the case of anti-gravity, they don't want you to know about that either for some reason. So that's why all that stuff happens. That's an entire different topic. I was just getting on a little rant there. Getting back to this whole thing about Noah's Ark. Okay, let's just play this clip right here real quick. We're going to get into a number of things. Let's just play this real fast.
See. Have uncovered what appear to be hidden tunnels similar to the descriptions of the biblical account of Noah's Ark.
Our next guest says his newly found evidence can prove that Noah's Ark did in fact exist, turning this biblical mystery into a reality. Joining us now from Turkey is one of those researchers from Noah's Ark Scans, Andrew Jones. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us and for all the good work that you're doing. This is fascinating. Tell us about your findings that could prove the real-life existence of Noah's Ark.
Thank you for having me on. Yes, greetings from the mountains of Ararat, where the Bible says the ark landed about 1 mile from the Iranian border. And in this remote area, this boat formation was discovered in 1959. But our new research has shown that there are tunnels about 4 meters down.
Right, this is exactly what we already covered. And actually, I'm going to show you some more evidence of it. Is it this one here? No, this is actually the Ron Wyatt stuff. I was going to show you later. Let me just show you this real quick. Okay, so got some of this scan was from 5.6 to 6.7 meters depth. Noah's Ark scans, recent ground penetrating radar studies revealed the central corridor of the western inside hole. We believe this corridor is on the second floor of the Ark, as we have further findings revealing the hole underneath it. So you can see that there. And we had Ron Wyatt come up with this first. Okay, Ron Wyatt back in the 70s and 80s talking about this. He also looked for the Ark of the Covenant, if I recall correctly. Noah's Ark 7-part video, The Forgotten Discovery by Ron Wyatt, who set out on his first trip to eastern Turkey in 1977 to find Noah's Ark. Due to the discovery of his findings, the Turkish government ended up announcing in 1987 that Noah's Ark was found. They decided to dedicate the site as Noah's Ark in the surrounding area as a national park, where Mr. Wyatt was invited as a guest of honor. The discovery made headlines and even got attention of major news media outlets such as ABC News, who did a 2020 report on it, The Miracle of Noah's Ark, with Ron Wyatt. Jesus replied, I tell you, if these stop speaking, the stones will cry out. Luke 19:40. The conclusion of the biblical archaeological discoveries is that the rocks are crying out to mankind, that the Bible and the prophets and the apostles of Christ are apostles and the Christ are all real. Okay. So I'm not going to show you the videos here. You can go check out Ron Wyatt's work. He covered this. I've covered it actually before a long time ago. Here you have Wes Huff basically discounting it immediately. So this whole Noah Ark's discovery, yeah, it's not legit. If we could deal with reality for just a moment and suspend what a lot of people want to be true rather than what is true, pretty much everything about the facts coming out of the story are embroiled in sensationalism and non-credible archaeology. This is complete bullshit. I believe there was a Noah and an Ark, but the formation in the Anatolian mountains is almost certainly not the remains of that. So let me show you what's wrong here. First, Wes Huff is not an archaeologist. Okay, this is what's so funny. Everyone, ever since he got clout on the internet, he thinks he can just say whatever the hell he wants and he won't get challenged by anybody. And actually, that's a problem for him, because now I'm starting to see how he backs out of debates. He's not willing to back up what he says. He just puts his opinion out. He is not an archaeologist, flat out. I put this out literally minutes ago. First, Wes, you're not an archaeologist, so why are you making dogmatic statements about something you're not an expert in? I could understand you making an argument, setting out some of your points, etc., but you did none of that here. There are only two potential legitimate places where there is evidence of a structure that could be Noah's Ark. One of those places is the one you're easily dismissing here. The other is Mt Ararat. So some make the argument it has to be on Mt Ararat when the Bible never specifically says on Mt Ararat. It says the mountains of Ararat in Scripture, not Mt Ararat. So if your argument is from that as the means of debunking something scientifically plausible, I would say that is a very weak argument, but then again, you made no argument here. You merely made a statement of opinion, and you have no backing for your opinion. Let's just let the investigation go forward, see what comes of it. This is the location that Ron Wyatt said was the resting place of the Ark. The fact of the matter is, I have probably more qualifications than Wes Huff to talk about this. Okay, he's got studies in biblical texts. Okay, he understands languages. He doesn't know archaeology. He doesn't know science. I have a science degree. These guys are using modern science to check for what's underneath the ground. That is evidence. End of story. Wes Huff isn't qualified to even comment on it, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, he can make an argument. He's a smart guy, but he didn't even do that. He just put out his opinion with nothing to back it. So I'm gonna call him out on it. It's just straight up BS. And then you got people like this, churchleaders.com. You got all these ridiculous Protestants that just follow everything Wes Huff says. New Noah's Ark discovery is not legit, says apologist Wes Huff. He is not an archaeologist. He doesn't have a science degree. He just has a degree in linguistics and has to do with biblical studies. That's all. Okay, that's all he has. Okay, he might have clout online. He might have taken on Billy Carson. I saw this earlier today. I thought it was hilarious. This kind of is sort of the point of what's been going on of recent, particularly with Wes Huff. I respect the man. I would like to interview him one day, but I don't like what he's been doing of recent. Okay. Here you have Wes Huff, Billy Carson. This is what made him famous. I have to take off the music. I don't know if there's a copyright on it, but of course he acts like he's all tough. I took on the Billy Carson. I mean, goodness gracious, dude. Billy Carson obviously is not. He's a little bit sensationalistic. He obviously is into the whole ancient aliens thing and not exactly really sticking to the facts and evidence so much compared to someone like Wes Huff. So Wes Huff called him out. He was right. Wes Huff did the right thing here. And he got famous off it, right? But when it comes to other people, he's just, he pushes Billy Carson all the way, but then he just kind of dodges Jay Dyer and Orthodox and all these people. It's just kind of funny, actually. Like, he refuses to debate them. And then you got Ruslan here on YouTube, like, trying to, like, basically stand up for Wes Huff. And it's just kind of weird. The whole thing's weird. I mean, if you're not willing to stand up and do something, come on, man. You know what I mean? Like, of course, recently he blocked Jay Dyer because of this post here. Apparently, he's friends with James White. And I respect James White as well, but I think James White's wrong about a lot of stuff. I called his ministry actually 20 years ago. I literally called James White's ministry, Alpha and Omega Ministries, 20 years ago and asked him about what they think about the early church, anti-Nicene early church fathers. And they told me they just literally ignore him. Not him, not James White, but the president of Alpha and Omega Ministries that I talked to on the phone back then 20 years ago. Wasn't him, but some other guy. And said that the early church fathers were pretty much irrelevant. And I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? Are you insane? You're a Christian and you just ignore the early church fathers? Okay, that makes no sense. So I was a Protestant back then. Technically, they would call me a Protestant today, although I don't identify as one. I just find it, I'm a Christian. I try to study the scriptures. I study the books surrounding the scriptures, the ancient historical books. I got to show you guys this interesting interview on Flagrant with Andrew Schultz interviewing Wes Huff. Pretty hilarious how Wes Huff had no response to what Andrew Schultz said. It was an extremely basic breakdown of sort of what happened in church history that led to the Protestant and Catholic and Orthodox church you see today. And by the way, I'm not Orthodox. Apparently Andrew Schultz is. Check this out.
Just so I can understand this. Orthodox have been holding it true this entire time. Then the Catholics kind of change it up a little bit.
Well, no, it's trickier than that.
And then the thing that the Catholics create gets changed up again. And then it gets changed up again. It gets changed up again. But them Orthodox have been holding it true this whole time.
I mean,
kind of crazy how that...
It's kind of funny. He goes on to say some stuff. I'll tell you what Wes Huff was saying. I probably can't play the whole clip here, but... So it's kind of true what he's saying. The Orthodox Church hasn't changed their system at all. What happened was the Catholic Church, they had their holy wars going on. And one time they came back without any booty, right? Like treasures, whatever you want to call it, from a war. And apparently they were not supposed to come back empty-handed. So they sacked Constantinople, which is an Orthodox city. And this obviously pissed off the Orthodox Church. So then you had the Bishop of Rome, which is what we call the Catholic Church today, versus the bishop of that city. And the whole idea was the church before had multiple bishops in different cities, and it was a balance of powers, although the Bishop of Rome was considered preeminent, but among equals. And what ended up happening was, because of this sacking of the city, an Orthodox city, there was a falling out for the next 80 to 100 years, and it eventually led to the Great Schism in 1059, where then the Catholic bishop basically declared himself in charge of the entire church. So he's the one who changed it up. It's true, just like Andrew Schultz said. And then after that, because they got so far off track with making up their own doctrines and changing things, and by the way, like I think it was 60 years later, they banned priests from marrying in 1120 AD and canceled marriages of current priests. They did all that. They literally broke up marriages. and forced all priests to be celibate. So that was something that happened less than 1,000 years ago. And so it wasn't the entire history of the Catholic Church they were doing this. It was not. And this was actually predicted in 1 Timothy 4, that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to doctrines of devils, deceiving spirits, forbidding to marry, commanding to abstain from meats. And the chapter right before that, 1 Timothy 3, says a bishop should be husband of one wife. So the Pope doesn't have a wife, does he? And he's the Bishop of Rome. So he's actually violating the scriptures. So it's just kind of funny. And then after that, you had the Protestant Reformation. Now it's because the Catholic Church got off so far off track. The protesters or Protestants came up with a set of grievances, and Martin Luther was ahead of it, although Martin Luther was kind of a wild card himself and kind of said crazy stuff off the fly too. Perhaps this was before he got himself back on track. I don't know what happened here. But Luther at different times said crazy stuff in his own writings. He said God is no better than a scoundrel. Maybe this was when he was wrestling with his faith between becoming Protestant or something. I don't know what happened here. Christ committed adultery with the woman at the well. This is what he said. He wrote this crazy stuff like this. Okay, and then he also wanted to remove books from the Bible. I think he eventually got his mind on track. I don't know what happened with Martin Luther, but clearly not a good sign. Let's just put it that way. I don't want to get into all the history of the church, but the point is that it's funny because Wes Huff is friends with James White. James White is from Alpha Omega Ministries. I called their ministry like 20 years ago, talked to the president. I said, hey, I've been looking into the early church fathers. It feels like we should be listening to them more. And he was like, well, they don't have anything relevant to say. He said something to that effect. I can't remember his exact words. But this is the problem I've noticed with some of the Protestant churches. They refuse to look at the early church, what they said. These are the disciples of the apostles. Maybe they had something good to say. We should listen to it. And of course, Wes Huff in this interview goes on to try to say that the entire point of the Reformation was to return us back to the primitive church. And the point is that how can you return yourself to the primitive church if you literally ignore the early church? You just straight up ignore it. That doesn't make any sense, does it? At any rate. And a perfect example of this is what we saw with Pope Francis trying to say all the religions are a language to God. And we've seen what happened with Vatican II, where they essentially tried to say the Muslim God is the same as the Christian God. They just don't have the correct doctrine. And I've already covered this in the recent past, that where the God of Islam comes from, Allah is actually related to the god Diana, goddess Diana, and actually they had the triune goddess statues at some of these Muslim mosques, showing it is indeed tied to it. They have the crescent moon, Diana, Artemis. We had the moon, Artemis moon mission. They called her the torch bearer in NASA's own publications. We have Prometheus being built, a statue with a torch in his hand. The light bearer, we're talking about Lucifer. So this is the devil's way of trying to bring all, of course, the religions together. If the Pope never went off track, if he would have stayed part of the larger church, the Orthodox Church, this division has led to what you ultimately see today, infiltration by the devil. I think it mostly started around 1470 with the Vatican libraries being built. That was at the end of the millennial kingdom, as I've talked about before. And we've had 500 years under the red dragon, not referring to the Pope, but just the devil himself over the world for 500 years. And you can see how over time it's gotten worse and worse and worse. Vatican II was what caused this sort of dialogue, like, oh, the religions are really just a language to God, which is a lie. There's only one true religion. This is why a lot of people that were traditional Catholics reject Vatican II. This is why Mel Gibson, for example, is part of a church that is separated from the Catholic Church. This is what I'm trying to get at. And this is what this division caused ultimately in the end. You can see with a lot of Protestant churches, numerous of them off track, some of them on track. Again, I'm by default a Protestant, allegedly, even though I don't like calling myself one, because I'm just a Christian trying to seek the truth. So what are the proposed locations of Noah's Ark? Like I said, there are two main sites. Durapinar site, Ararat Mountains. That's the one that we were just talking about. Ron Wyatt went to, the one everyone's talking about today. The other one is Mt Ararat itself. And at any rate, the other one, they don't even have evidence on these other ones. This is just what the Quran says. This is what just some other theories are. The only two places with actual evidence are these two right here. Right here, these two. And this one, I saw the evidence for this one. It was very icy. It could be it. Very hard to tell. Extremely icy. Look like there's some wood. Look like they're in some sort of structure. It's hard to tell. I mean, all I saw was like a very short video about it a long time ago. This one seems to be very legit, man. Like, I would give it at least 60-40. Like, it's either this one or this one. And I'm thinking it's this one here. I really am thinking it's this one. It could be this one. It could be literally on Mt Ararat. Okay, I'm not sure, right? So, but I mean, you shouldn't just dismiss it off the bat like that. It's just kind of silly. You should look into it more, right? And also, I did a video some years ago, literally like 13 years ago on YouTube, about how scientifically possible it is to fit every single kind of animal in Noah's Ark, not including obviously sea animals because they can live in the water. You don't need to put them on a boat. But the point is everyone talks about species. You don't need every species of dog, every species of cat, or blah, blah, blah. You just need the kind of animal. And I actually did it scientifically. I actually went through and did all the measurements and everything. And it seemed like there's about, I think there's like 40% space left for like walking around, putting food, stuff like that. You could literally fit every single kind of animal into the ball. You wouldn't have to do it with insects because they can be on floating things for the most part. Insects will figure out a way to live. In most cases, maybe not all, but aquatic, you don't have to deal with insects, and you only need kinds of animals. And if you think about it, it actually makes a lot of sense when you do all the science and math to it. And you would still have space. I did all the calculations. I want to do it again right now, but it really does fit. There is actually enough room. And my background is mechanical engineering, so I like aced calculus 5 and 4. Like, and calculus 5 is differential equations, but there's like even more after that. But I took all those, I aced them. It was easy. So I'm pretty sure I did it right. At any rate, that's my video. Kind of wonder what some of you guys think. Let me know in the comment section below, and thanks for watching.